Hey, so we're looking at IWM. IWM, I want to say that's Invesco is the creator of this index, but this index, it's meant to mirror the Russell 2000. And so this is kind of like our insight into what the smaller stocks are doing. And again, they're not small in terms of market cap. They're just small when you compare them to the Amazons, the Apples. I'm not sure what the smallest company is. Uh, off the, I don't really want to guess, but if I had to, probably the average of these 2,000 stocks that it's meant to follow is probably within like $1 and $5 billion in terms of market cap. So, these are pretty successful companies. It's just they're not the massively successful ones. So they're still small, so a lot of room to grow. And right off the bat, we're seeing this one is falling and falling rapidly. Lots of selling pressure here, especially in the past 2 weeks. Uh, for whatever reason, we had this large sell last week, but really didn't um, drop that much in price, not compared to the last week. I guess again, these bars down here, these faded bars, that's just quantity of shares. So a lot of trades were happening, and the fact that it didn't move that much, I have to imagine that is a good price point for us. It just happened to drop a little lower, but there was lots of trades. So um, again, I'm thinking it's just, hypothetically, if there was 100 trades in that day, when the average is maybe like 50 trades, those 100 trades were all within a very small margin, roughly about a $2 to $3 window. So there's a lot of support for this index being in that range. So I think we have a decent chance that this one will actually push up um, and stay within that range. I think overall, so currently, I'm just going to update my sheet here. So currently it's at 171. In the after hours, it's going up a little bit. Nothing worth talking about, but did go up a little bit. I drew in a buy point at 172, so we're actually slightly below that point. I think it's a solid time to buy this one. Um, Hypothetically, if it did want to continue trending downwards, I think it would meet strong resistance at 164. We'll see what kind of happens. Um, so some of the lines that we have drawn in here, we have these purple lines that notes the long-term uptrend, and if we back this out to a monthly chart, you can see the long-term uptrend that it's been in for like 10 years. And so right now it's actually slightly below that purple, the lower trend line. So that to me is a signal that it's actually undervalued right now. So it's for that one reason right there. It's a solid time to buy. If we zoom back into a weekly chart, we have these horizontal lines. We have the red, blue, and green. And that was when we were looking at the 3 year period for this. And right now we're looking at the 2 year period. But again, most of the companies, even when I was looking at the 3 year chart, I was giving higher weight to the most recent times. And so this green line, I drew that in primarily because it was acting as support back in May of 22 and again in December of 22. And that's really all it was. I could have drew in the green line down here at the 164, but that seemed to be like the new low point for this one. And so it might touch that point again. We'll find out soon enough. But I could have drew it in there. It's just clearly there was a support line at the 172. There was also one at 164 because again it hit that point in June of 22 and then again in September, October of 22. So it hit that twice, just like it did the 172, and it bounced right back. So right now we're at that inflection point again. Maybe it'll trend back down to 164, hit that point again, and bounce back up. If it does, uh, it would only make sense to me to add on to the position, and you know, hopefully we can catch it. But right now it's at, to me, a buy point. It's slightly below the uptrend line, which, if we go back in time, whenever it's hit that black line at 164, it was just slightly below the uptrend line there, only by about $2. When it did it a second time, again, the gap widened a little bit, but we're only talking um, about $6 that time. If it hits it again, I mean, then we're talking like a $10 gap. So nothing crazy by any means, but you can see the gap is getting wider if it continues to bounce off that 164 as a support line. But again, the thinking here is if it's going below that uptrend, the lower limit of the uptrend, it surely should bounce back into that range. And if we just zoom back out to a monthly thing, you can see it really doesn't do it that often. And again, I realize this isn't the most accurate line, but it's definitely a line that it does seem to bounce off of. The only times it's gone below that, and this is the monthly chart going back to about 2011. It's done it once in 2016. It did it in 2020, which that was just a weird time. We actually skipped one in 2019. It dropped below that for just a month. And then more recently, it's gone below it again for just a month. And now it's actually dipped below it again. So I would expect next month it's going to just bounce back into that fair range. And then hopefully it's just over the months or possibly years, depending on it, it'll just kind of bounce between that uptrend lines, the lower end and the upper end of the purple overall uptrend line. And so, again, just zooming back in, and more or less just to summarize, the fact that it's not only is it at our green buy point, it's at the lower end of our purple uptrend lines, actually slightly below it, and really just for those two reasons, I think this one's a solid one. Again, overall it's in an uptrend. Uh, I think this one's a solid one to buy. And I probably will. This one, again, if we were to zoom back out, just to kind of get an idea of how it kind of fluctuates, if we were to buy this one at one of these low points back in 2016, it broke the line and it was 93. And then it broke it again in 2019, about 3 years later, and it was at 130. So it gained about 33, between about 35%. It grew in that 3 years, so about 10% on average. And most of the time it was growing. If you could have timed it right, it would have been 94 all the way up to 160. That's of course if you can time it. I think this is one that you probably could time. It does seem like it does go in cycles. Like when it hits the upper limit, it does over time trend down. It's just, again, realizing that it's always in an uptrend, um, it's not necessarily worth it that much, just because, if you would have sold out here in like 2014, it would have been 103. I mean, you would have made, again, probably like that 40-50% in that period, assuming you bought at the low, sold at the high. But then if you would have waited for the next like big drop, you really, it's almost not worth it. It almost makes sense to just hold it. It's just now we're kind of in a very fluctuating time because these bounces are happening a lot quicker. Like this time when it did bounce, I mean, that took a couple years to go from the upper limit of the trend line to the lower end of the trend line. And then it took a long time to hit the top again. Once it hit the bottom in like a quarter, like 3 or 4 months. So just something to think about. We'll circle back to this over time, but if we just zoom in, I think overall this one to me is a solid time to buy. So let me just update the date on this, and then I'll mark long-term uptrend, and so then let's just share it. So here we are, IWM. Currently it's at 171. I was saying to buy it at 172, so to me it's a good time to buy, and it's in a long-term uptrend. So that's pretty much the summary on this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'd be happy to see that and just kind of discuss a little further. But yeah, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.